I woke with the taste of smoke on my tongue and a baby in my arms that was not a baby. Only a wrapper folded the way my mother folded comfort into my childhood. The zinc roof remembered last night's rain and answered the wind with a tired rattle. I pressed my face to the cloth, breathing in the faint scent of palm oil and soap, and I rocked to the rhythm my bones have always known, the rhythm of lullabies I learned before I knew the weight of my own name. People say we dream what we love, and if that is true, then I have been in love with the sound of a child breathing since I was small enough to fit on the cool lap of our veranda steps. In the market, my mother would laugh, say, "Guinea-ka, oh Guinea, you again," when she caught me with some stranger's baby tied to my back, the tiny legs kicking, the crying already melting like sugar in the corner of a warm mouth. Even then, children would surrender to me like afternoon sun on the back of a sleeping lizard. It was my gift. It was also the thorn I carried quietly under my tongue, something that pricked when I smiled too wide. I married Toena for the quiet of his spirit first, and his hands second. He was an orphaned son, a boy who became a man by washing grief out of shirts until the fabric obeyed him. When he came to ask for me, people whispered that I was stubborn, that I had rejected men who smelled of imported perfume and drove cars that sounded like jealous bees, only to accept a man with dust on his sandals and prayer in his eyes. But when my spirit looked at his spirit, something bowed its head and said yes. We had little, a farm the size of a palm, a house with the memory of mud and rain still soft in its walls. Yet every evening we sat side by side on a low bench and ate from one plate, and I knew the taste of tenderness, the way my grandmother knew the names of herbs. It was enough, until time started counting years around my waist without counting children in my arms. The first year I didn't mind. I said, "Nanam, it will come," and my body agreed, soft and easy. The second year arrived like a polite stranger who never left, and I felt the air in the compound change whenever women washed their babies' wrappers and spread them on the line, a bright choir of cotton announcing their joy. The third year we swallowed bitter herbs together, my husband and I, because if a house is cold, you stoke every fire, yes. The herbalist tied a red thread on my wrist and told me to avoid milk on even days, pepper on odd days, and people who talk too much every day. We obeyed and prayed. Still, when the moon was fat and the crickets praised the night, I bled like a stubborn secret. In those months, my old dream came back, but it arrived like harmattan, dry, strange, carrying a new hush. I saw a big house with echoing floors and shut windows. Somewhere in the belly of that house, children cried, the kind of cry that sits and does not move. I walked door to door, both hands outstretched, whispering, "Diwo, Biko, my darlings." But when I reached for them, my hands met a wall of air. Their cries faded like songs on the back of a truck driving away, and I woke with my own mouth open, calling for what I could not hold. When I told Toena, he rubbed my back and said, "Manya, it is only a dream." But even his voice had a small crack in it, the kind of crack a pot gets when you carry it too often. My mother listened and frowned the way mothers do when they smell harm before it announces itself. "Those children are calling you," she said. "From where?" I asked. She only shook her head and told me to keep my ears clean. 5 years is a long time to sit on a stool, waiting for a child to crawl into your lap. It is long enough for women to begin to count your blessings for you, to remind you to pray like you do not know the shape of your own knees. It is long enough to visit a seer with eyes like old kola. I stood before that woman, the air thick with camwood and secrets, and before I opened my mouth, she said, "Why have you abandoned your children? Go and find them before the road forgets your footsteps." My throat tightened. "Mama, I have no children." She waved her hand the way old women wave away flies and lies. "They are waiting. When you find them, your hands will remember their work. I walked home carrying that sentence like a clay pot balanced on my head, steadying it with care. That evening, when the light softened and charcoal smoke painted the sky with soft grief, I turned to my husband. What of adoption? The word sounded like foreign cloth. Beautiful, but not yet mine. He spat water from his mouth in surprise, as if the word burned. God forbid, the only child in my house will be the child my blood recognizes. His certainty pressed a thumbprint on my chest. I went to bed with a mouthful of unsaid things and a prayer that sounded like a woman kneeling in a river. Her wrapper heavy with all she cannot drop. That night, a different dream found me. I was walking along a bush path with that green hush that lets the world hear itself. I heard the thin cry of a newborn, rising through grass, as if the ground itself was weeping. I followed the sound to a small trembling bundle wrapped in a cheap ankara, ants thinking about the journey to a sweet place. I lifted him, and as he settled into the bend of my elbow, the crying stopped. Heat spread through my bones like palm wine after blessings. I woke with a shout that did not belong to fear. My hands remembered. The wall of air was gone. Let this be a sign, I whispered to the quiet room. Let his father say yes. In the morning my husband did not speak of yes or no. He spoke of prices and cassava. The sign came on the road instead, not with trumpets, but with dust. I saw the baby exactly where my spirit had seen him, at the edge of the corn, his cry plucking the strings of my ribs. I walked past him, because obedience can be cruel. My feet carried me 3 steps before my heart turned me around. I wrapped him to my back, his heat settling against my spine like a promise, and I walked home with my head high and my prayer louder than my fear. That day, God was kind to me in a small way. My husband was not home when I arrived. I washed the baby with warm water and a careful hand, scrubbed a small bottle with salt and song, coaxed him with pap. He sighed, that deep, sweet sigh of an infant who has decided to live. I laid him on our mat and watched his chest rise like a tiny hill in the wind. Then I ran to the market, bought soap, powder, a towel with a cartoon that grinned wider than my worry. When I returned, the sun stood right over our roof. My husband stood in the doorway, with anger curling from his shoulders like heat. "Where did you get that child?" he asked, his voice flat and sharp. I told the truth as gently as a woman peels yam. "Kindness," I said. "Bushpath," I said. "Crying," I said. I asked him to look with his eyes and not only with his tradition. He listened like a gate listens to a begging dog. "If you want to be a saint," he said, "be a saint outside my house. 30 minutes, you or the child. Choose with sense. There are sentences that cut a life into before and after." I looked at the baby. He looked back with that serious gaze newborns have when they are deciding where to put their future. He yawned. I felt a voice open in me, a voice older than my mother's mother. It said, "You are a mother to those who are not held." Why do you think your dreams came like a summons? The dream children did not disappear. They waited for you to find your directions. Choose. I tied the baby to my back, folded my clothes, and put my heart in my pocket. I left my husband's threshold, with dust between my toes, and a fierce calm in the bowl of my belly. My mother saw me coming from the road and did not ask questions for the first minute, because some stories walk into a compound with their whole chest. When I spoke, she listened all the way to the end. Then she nodded like a kola nut broken before elders. "Hold him well," she said. "If God wanted to test your love, you have passed. If He wanted to show you the path to your own name, you have stepped on it." I slept that night with the baby beside me, his breath moving a little curl of hair on his forehead, my body finally relaxing into the bed, as if beds were invented for this. If a woman has a mouth and a pot and a strong back, she can build a day that feeds her. I woke before the chickens and made jollof so red it looked like courage. I carried it to the market in a pot that had known only weddings. and I sold it with the smile of a woman who has to buy milk by evening. People ate and said, "Keep the change." A man bought 2 plates and pressed money into my palm like a brother. A woman tasted and put word into the wind. The next day the same. The third day, more. I rented a small corner with a good shade, bought an extra stove, learned exactly how much salt a hungry mason respects, how much pepper the midwife wants on her tongue after a long day. I carried my baby in a cloth at my front, and between serving spoons, I would tip his bottle and watch his mouth find the nipple like a sunbird finding red petals. The market women teased me. "Mama baby," they called. I laughed with them, because a name like that is both a song and a dare. News moves differently when it has a child's face. First, a girl with eyes too old for her forehead stopped me near the meat cellar and said, "Emma, take her. My mind is dark." She pressed a newborn into my arms and ran the way girls run when fathers become predators and the world closes its eyes. I shouted, but she was already part of the crowd, her sorrow dissolving into the street. I took the baby home and named her for Light. Then someone else came, and someone else. "They say you can hold them," a man told me, dropping a bundle as if it would burn him. "They say you will not ask questions that kneel in shame." I learned quickly how to turn a room into a nest. I learned how to boil bottles in a tin of water, balanced on 3 stones. I learned the sweetness of borrowed milk and the stubbornness of colic, the science of sleep that only arrives when everyone else is awake. 1 became 3, 3 became 6, 6 became 12. I did not count my sacrifices. I counted breaths. My business grew like a child whose aunties keep pinching his cheeks with love. More stoves, more girls learning to stir rice without stirring smoke into their lungs. A larger signboard with my name painted crooked by a kind man who couldn't spell but had a generous heart. People said the favor I enjoyed was supernatural. I said it was the math of compassion. The more I held, the more the world's hands remembered how to give. Men left change without looking back. Women sent yams twice the size of their shame. A teacher paid for uniforms unasked. The tailor mended wrappers for free on Tuesdays, because that was the day her own child died, and gratitude refused to leave her life alone. As the children grew into different heights of laughter, our compound developed a music. Morning coughs, afternoon quarrels about catapults, evening stories told by a grandmother who wasn't a grandmother until life insisted. One morning I opened my door and found my pa standing there, hat in hand. My husband was thinner, like a sentence that had been edited again and again until only the truth remained. He greeted me, eyes on the ground. "Ginikabiko, please." He said the spirits would not let him sleep. He said everywhere he went the world arranged his shadow into a woman's shape, into mine. He said he had been wrong with the confidence only a wounded man can carry. "Come home," he begged, with the children, those 12 mouths that could sing an army into battle and win with sweetness, quieted behind me, listening with the holy curiosity children keep like candy under their tongues. My first thought was fear. My second was love's memory. My third was the practical fact of 12 plates and the dignity of their spoons. "It is too late," I said, and I meant it in 7 different ways. He lifted his face, and in his eyes I saw the humility that is the true cousin of strength. "Let them be mine too," he said. The sentence knelt between us and begged me to believe it. I asked for time. My mother washed plates very slowly that evening and spoke softly. "If the roof widens, more can sit," she said. "A child deserves a mother and a father. A woman deserves rest." I watched the children sleep, their legs tangled like old roots beneath a tree, the youngest with her fist still stubbornly holding a dream. I felt a door open inside me, with the gentle courage of a dawn. "We will go," I told my mother, "but we will not go as guests." We returned to a house that looked at first like the past, but smelled like a new beginning. Fresh paint, clean mats, a courtyard that had learned manners while we were away. My husband started telling jokes badly, and the children learned to laugh at his attempt, which is another kind of love. He repaired his business the way men repair praise, quietly, persistently, until money returned and called him by name. He learned the geometry of homework, the politics of portion sizes, the theology of why two teenagers cannot share one shirt in peace. He flinched the first time a baby vomited pap on his trousers. He laughed the second time. The third time he didn't bother to stand up, only wiped the child's mouth with a corner of his shirt and kept listening to the music on the radio. People in the village shook their heads, then nodded. Visitors sat in our compound and watched a miracle they could not explain out loud. We became ordinary in the most extraordinary way. A family built first from courage, then from forgiveness, then from the daily work of small tendernesses. Years passed, and my body remained the quiet river it had always been, useful, wide-hipped, but unmoved by the moon. I stopped asking it to change. I had my children, 12 of them, each with a story, each with a scar, healed into strength. I told the ones who had been abandoned the truth in a language that did not shame their mothers. Sometimes a woman is too wounded to hold a blessing. Sometimes the world knifes a girl and calls her a woman anyway. But God has long arms. They grew like cassava, patiently, then all at once. Some chose school and chased English with fierce laughter. Some chose trade and learned how to measure profit with a clean conscience. Our table remained long. Our door remained open. The compound's night was a quiet kind of loud. A chorus of crickets, a baby's sigh, my husband's soft snore, the whisper of a page, turning in the hands of a boy, planning a life larger than his father's scar. Then one morning, the world shifted in a small, silly way. I woke bloated and angry with myself for eating too much Gary at night. My back hurt, with the specific rudeness of a woman who has bent over too many plates. I went to the clinic to collect ordinary medicines and came back carrying a story. The nurse spoke with a smile that refused to apologize. "You are 4 months pregnant." The room tilted. I laughed. Then I cried. Then I laughed again, because crying felt like a betrayal to all the women whose wombs are permanent deserts, but whose arms are forests. "How?" I asked like a small girl. The nurse shrugged, as if God was a tailor who liked surprising his customers with extra cloth. "It happens," she said. "Don't argue with good news." I went home and sat on the step, the sun on my face, my hands suddenly careful. Tawena returned and looked at me with eyes already asking, "Nunye em." My mouth did not know any language but joy. "Twins," I told him later, when the midwife's hands found 2 hearts knocking politely inside me. "Twins," he repeated as if the word was a proverb, as if repeating it would make sure it didn't escape. When the twins came, the village danced, as if someone had poured palm wine directly into the ground, and the earth itself was tipsy with gratitude. Drummers beat the old skins until even the goats swayed. Women ululated with the kind of sharp joy that shaves sorrow. Men slapped backs and exaggerated their laughter, the way men do when God answers a question they did not ask out loud. I lay in my room with a baby at each breast, my body a bridge, my heart a field of ripe yam. The older children turned into small parents overnight. "Give me," they fought. "Let me hold them." And I rested in a way I had never rested before, because love had hired help. If you stood outside our door at dusk, you would see light falling on faces that had survived the grammar of abandonment and learned fluent belonging. You would hear a girl teaching her brother algebra while pounding ogbono. You would smell onions surrendering to oil, hear a pot praise the fire with soft bubbles, feel the evening slide into the courtyard like a cartoon cat. My business had grown into businesses. I left the big pot to younger women I had trained, their wrists strong and their laughter stronger. I oversaw accounts with the seriousness of a woman who knows the cost of everything worth keeping. We never became rich the way people write about in newspapers. We became abundant the way soil becomes generous after rain. One day the children told me to dress in the yellow wrapper my husband loved, the one with small birds and ridiculous flowers. No reason. They lied with smiles that did not hide anything. They led me down a road I had walked since I was a girl and stopped in front of a building that wore sunlight like a proud head wrap. On the wall, a signboard carried my name painted with proper spelling this time, Gin Orphanage Home. Under it, small letters, what is greater than a child? My knees said they were tired and knelt without asking me first. I cried the kind of tears that taste like all the soups of my life mixed together. Bitter leaf, ogbono, agusi, every flavor that got me here. I thought of the first dream, the wall of air, the babies I couldn't touch. I thought of the bush path and the corn, and the boy who stopped crying when I wrapped him to my back. I thought of the day I chose to leave, and the day the man I loved chose to expand. I thought of the girl who handed me her child and ran, and then I stood up because I had work to do. Now, when night settles, and the new babies breathe in a chorus that sounds like the softest praise, I sit by the window and talk to the woman I was. I tell her that God is wild and kind, that He makes roads out of people, and that sometimes He refuses the straight path because circles hold more love. I tell her that motherhood is not only blood and pain and the mathematics of months, it is also vow and shelter and the courage to open your door, even when the wind is not polite. I tell her that forgiveness is not a blanket we throw over wrong. It is a meal we cook and share until we remember we were hungry together. I tell her that children are the only things heavier and lighter than air, and that every time a child laughs in our compound, the okra plants grow another inch even in the dark. I have lived the length of 3 women, the one who rocked a wrapper and called it joy, the one who chose a child over a husband and found both in the end, the one who became a river and learned to carry more boats than she thought possible. When people ask me how I did it, I smile at their cleverness and say, I didn't, we did. Me and the babies, and the women who mended, and the men who changed, and the market that remembered my name, and the God who delights in confusing doctors in gentle ways. Some nights I still dream of that house from the beginning, but now the doors are open, and the children run toward me with sandy feet and prayers on their tongues. I wake to the real sound of real breathings, to hands tugging my wrapper, to teenagers rolling their eyes in that language all teenagers learn, to my husband snoring a forgiveness song, to the city rising at the edge of the village, to the world widening like a skirt caught by the wind. If you are listening to me now with your chest tight and your hands empty, hear me well. The road does not end where it bends. Sometimes the detour is the destination. Sometimes the loss is the doorway. Sometimes the child who saves you is not the child you imagined. And sometimes the man who breaks your heart is the same man who learns to carry it like a calabash filled with oil, careful not to spill. Hold on, wash your hands, stir the pot. Keep your ears clean. When you hear a cry, on the bush path, in your neighbor's room, inside your own tired body, go and pick it. Tie it to your back. Walk home. The world will meet you at your door with more children than you planned, and more love than you can count, and your life will become what it was always meant to be. A house with open windows, a yard full of laughter, a story that does not apologize for its miracles.